thanks everyone for joining us. I hope that you will have a few minutes of pleasant time. It's my intention to share some stories during these programs, and during the period of Stalin, my father, and together with many other Baha'is of Russia, he was for 7 years in prison, and also then they were sent to a penal colony of Soviet Union in Siberia, where is most commonly is known as Gulag. So they were there for these years, and they had a terrible time. Many of the Baha'is, they died in that period. Few, like my father and some other of his friends, they survived. And they, after release from prison, they came to Iran. They were sent to Iran. They were banished. Many of the friends of my father that I met later on, they told me that they owed their life to stories of my father. He was a very good storyteller, and whenever they were in the lowest lowest time of spirit, and they were so depressed and upset, he would share with them some stories, and this helped them a lot, helped them to really be again hopeful and enjoy this. I myself also experienced this during the period of Falsafi, the period that he was attacking the Baha'is, and then later on, of course, they destroyed the Baha'i Haziratul Quds and so on. That period also, I found that we really were so refreshed by the stories of the faith, and when we got together and we told the stories and everybody said the stories, it was so pleasant. So now, of course, we are neither in prison nor in Siberia, but it's a time of really difficulties and challenges. And I think it will inspire us during this period to think about our some of the interesting things that we have witnessed in our life. My father, that had spent his best years of youth in prison and in Gulag, when he came back to Iran, together with my mother, they decided to do the things that is very unusual, and they decided to go pioneering to the worst places on earth that is possible, as if they had not suffered enough. So they did that. And this is many of our Baha'is, they say that beloved guardian always asked Baha'is of Iran to go out of Iran, and they didn't go, and that is why they suffered and this and that. But this is a big mistake. It's not correct. Beloved guardian knew very well that many of the Baha'is of Iran, they could never think of going out of Iran. He always advised them to go to pioneering, to go to villages and small places of Iran so that they can spread the faith all over the world. Because beloved guardian believed that unless we have very strong assemblies, this is a book of dear Mr. Fatah Azam, that his last book of his life, he has compiled some of the messages of some of the writings of beloved guardian. And in that he says that the beloved guardian, at the beginning, he thought that it is his duty, that Abdul Baha wanted him to establish the House of Justice and be the chairman of the House of Justice. But very soon, and in fact, that was his first message that he sent to the world. He said that he's so honored that he has been given this important task. But very soon he discovered that it's impossible to have the universal house of justice unless you have very strong, what he called spiritual assemblies of mudun wa qura, that means cities and small towns. And he said that we have to establish that. So then one plan after another, he was asking friends to go all over the world, all over Iran, villages. And my parents at that time, they decided to go to very, very tough places. And you should know that some of the toughest places on earth for pioneering are in Iran. I mean, I can say all of the toughest places are in Iran, because you cannot imagine those years, villages and towns, small towns of Iran, that they were all, they were so hateful. They were fighting with each other. Different sects of Islam were killing each other, and so on and so forth. To think that this is really what I'm trying to now. Yes. It's not I'm telling you the stories, it's not my intention when I'm talking about my memories. I don't want to talk about, it's not my aim to talk about myself and my life. It's my aim to talk to you about the things that I have learned in my life from the friends all over, and from how I have witnessed the blessings of Baha'u'llah to all of those that they raised to serve his cause. And really how Concourse on High stood, as beloved Guardian says, on line to help them wherever they were. That is my aim. Now, so I start from the earliest that I could have a memory. Let's say I was 5 years old. When I was 5 years old, it was just beginning of the 10 Years Crusade of 1953. Beloved Guardian in that defined several places to have to establish assemblies. One of them was Gunabad. Gunabad is the desert of Lut, Kavir Lut. The picture that you see is Kavir Lut. It is known on Google, if you search, as the hottest spot on earth. It's the most notorious desert of the world. And sometimes in some of the spots of this desert, the temperature reaches to almost 70 degrees Celsius. So you can imagine, and we have many of the famous cities of the faith that you can read in Dawnbreakers, like Gunabad, like Qa'in, where we have the Janab Nabil Akbar Qa'ini, near Birjan, places like Boshruye, and we have Mullah Hussein Boshruyi, right in this desert, the hottest and the toughest place on earth. Forget about the temperature. Temperature is the best part of it. People are the worst part of it. And so how many hundreds and thousands of the friends in these areas that they sacrifice their life. Now, we were in several occasions, the spiritual assemblies of Mashhad had tried to conquer Gunabad and establish a spiritual assembly. And they could not do that. They could not do that. It's because they killed some of the members of the assembly. They burned the houses of people. They throw them out. This is the Google map, shows city of Gunabad. This is city of Gunabad. You can see, I don't know if mouse is visible on pictures. And so on the bottom left corner of the screen, you can see city of Gunabad, and you can see the whole complex. Now we go south to this, from Gonabad we will reach to Birjan, Boshruye, Ferdos, Faran, what also the Abdul Baha called it Faran, is paradise. But this is the paradise of, at that time. You can see how dry and how tough it is. Many of my friends, they ask me, how is that you don't know swimming? I said, I tell them that, you know, when I was child, if we find water, we would drink it. We don't swim in it. This is where you can see no water. And so we went to this place, to the city of Gonabad. And here you can see the picture of one of the first assemblies of Gonabad, where most of them somehow were destroyed and they were sent out. The two persons here that I want to talk about them. One is the second row on the right. Mr. Ruhi is one of the Baha'is that remained in, of course, they throw, he left Gonabad once and then he came back. So when we were in Gonabad, he came back together with his brother, this young, nice, handsome man at the corner left, seated down. His name was Mirza Nazar Ali, and he was a magnificent Baha'i. Till end of his life, I will tell you stories about him. So they were two of the Baha'is with us, and there were some others that we lived in that place. Now, Mr. Ruhi had a son that they invited him for a wedding ceremony or something. On the way, they stopped the bus and they killed him. He was martyred. And then Mr. Nazar Ali Ruhi, Nazar means the sight of Ali. Sight of Ali was blinded in Gonabad at that time. And I will show you later on, he is in Gonabad. Anyhow, so we went to the Gonabad. You can see the city of Gonabad now bigger. On the left side of the screen is the city of Gonabad. We went to that city. They did not allow us to live in any place. They threw us out. We came to this village of Beidukht. Right at the center of the screen is a small place. It calls Beidukht. It says Beidukht. This place is a real nowhere. And it's a very poor community place. They did not let us any place there. On the right side of the camera, of the screen, you can see here it says Kausar, that small spot right there. This was a place where there was a opium farm where they grow poppies and they harvest opium. And at that time, opium, like today in Afghanistan or to some other places, was grown by the government itself. So right at the middle of this farm, there was, in that map, Google Map, that's interesting. Just a few days ago, I was searching in Google Map. I searched because I remember that right opposite our house, there was a Yakhdan. Yakhdan is they call it ice store. Ice, where a place where they store ice. I will explain to you how. Right at the middle of this nowhere, there was this dome, like a cone, up there. And at the corner, you can see at the horizon, there are some ruined houses that they were, the farmers that they were working in that farm, they live there. At the center of this ice, this is a cone, is about 15 meters high, and they make it with the clay, with the mud clay. It's very thick, and inside it there is a deep, 5 meters deep hole that the water comes in from those holes. They run the water that comes from Qanat, from a series of wells. They bring the water here during the winter. They fill this tank at the bottom with ice, with water, and then it freezes. When it freezes, they seal all the doors. And during the summer, they cut this, they open the door, they cut the ice, and they use it for ice. So this was the yacht, this was our place. And right at the middle of the farm, there was a house that you can see here, the ruin of that house. I found them in Google. The reason that I found it is that later on I understood that Yakhdan, that tower, is very unique and is historical in that part. It's called Yakhdan Kausar. You can search in Google about it, and it says there. And because of that, they have preserved all of the ruined houses around it. Right at the mid, I think this was our house because there is only one that is at the middle of the farm. And of course, the farm is now destroyed completely. There is no farm. So this house was built by the owner of the farm, a rich guy, and then many members of his family died there, and the people thought that this is a haunted place, so nobody would live there. So they told us that now you may get, they were hopeful that we will go there and we will die. So they rented this place to us. It was a big place. We lived in one corner of that only at that time, and the rest of the rooms were all empty. Me and my sister that were always in prison in this house because we could not go out, because those villagers, those people that they were there, they were all behind us to kill us, and they would come after us. So we were in this place always sitting, living there like a prisoner. Only my older brother, that was 15 years old, would go to school. He was the only one who would go to school out of the house. So we were there, and my mother, that had come from Russia, had studied in Baha'i school in Ashgabat, and had such wonderful memories of thousands of Baha'is in Ashgabat and the Baha'i temple and all of that. This is the village. So we could see from the windows of our house, we could see from windows of this, we could see only this dome, and we could see in the horizon of the farm, if we would have gone out, at night we could have seen these houses that they were like ruins, all mud houses. And my mother was so worried that we are not going to know anything about architecture, about civilization. We will think that the world is always like that, it's so boring and so things. She was talking about, she would sit with us and for hours and hours would try to draw a picture of the civilization and nice places and the vivid image of the Baha'i temple in Ashgabat with so beautiful dome and with minarets and all that, and Baha'is and saying prayer, my grandfather saying prayer in the lectern and all of that, and such, the famous Baha'i chanters like Muallima Khanum and others that they are world famous now, and everybody that knows them knew them, that they had such heavenly voices in Ashgabat. And she would talk to us about that. And when I, as a 5-year-old kid, whenever I heard my mother is talking about the temple, and I would see that how excited she gets, her eyes get bright and full of light, and she's as if she's flying in sky. So I would ask her, who built the temple? How they built the temple? And she said that if you become architect, you can build a temple. So from that age, I always thought that, first of all, I thought the architects, they only built temples. I never thought that they built anything else because I had no imagination about cities or anything else. And anybody asked me what you want to be, I said, I want to be architect. Now, this was the way that we stayed in that place, and we had a really very, very tough life. One night, one day, my brother did not come home. And we were so, I know that my mother was crying, my father was so anxious going in and out, and up to midnight we didn't hear. At midnight, me and my sister in another, that we were sleeping, heard a voice of some people crying and this and that, and then we understood that a young boy has come and is telling to my father that the people, they attacked your son and they killed him and they throw him in a well. So they asked him to show them the well. So my father took a door out of hinge from the house, and they went with another Baha'i that was staying with us, Mr. Fadai, that night was staying with us. They took the door and they took the body of my brother out of the well. He was still alive, and took months and months till he recovered. And but this event was the last nail in the coffin of the Baha'i community there. They insisted that we have to go, all the Baha'is should leave Gonabad. That was end of our pioneering journey and to that place, and we left the city. Now it's very interesting. That young, beautiful, handsome man that I showed you, Mirza Nazar Ali Ruhi, is this man. What you see, I got his photograph from his from nephew of his uncle, his brother, from nephew of his brother that heard my talk sometime somewhere in the world. I mentioned his name. He sent me this photograph some couple of years ago and said that this was, and Mirza Nazar Ali that lost his eyes in Gonabad, because they hit him in his head with brick while attacking him, and he became blinded. He was there till end of our period with his brother and their children. His brother had one son that was killed, and then he had another 4 children. And they were playing with us, and sometimes when they would come at night, they would come to our home for events. And that's interesting that, so they threw us all out of Gonabad, and I did not know what happened to, we called him Amu, because all of his his brother was taking care of him, and all of his children would call him uncle because he was their uncle. So, but we also called him uncle, Amu. So I never knew what happened to Amu. Years passed. I was a young man, and I was in Iran. One day, National Youth Committee of Iran asked me to go to a city in north of Iran, the border of Russia, a very cold place called Bojnor. Many of you know city of Bojnor. At that time, it was a very small city. Now it's a bigger city. And so I went to Bojnor, and there was a very, very heavy snow. So all the roads became blocked after I arrived. And as such, the convention that we were supposed to have there could not have participants. Only 3 or 4 youth, they reached there. The rest of them, the road was blocked. They couldn't come. Every day I would go to this, their Baha'i center, to this meeting. And every day we could hear that right at the middle of the thing, we could hear, and this was we could see a blind old man with his stick is coming through that snow to the youth meeting. But no adult was, everybody was, they were adult, but young, very young. I was maybe the oldest of them, and I was maybe 20 years old at that time. Anyhow, and then this was Amu. This man, after losing his eyes, after all of those things that happened to the family, left that city and went pioneering to another miserable place there. And I say miserable place because in that very place, He was, and this is my brother that I told you that was stabbed, and at that time, and I will tell you that he really could not, from that day, he could not even tell the name of a school to him. He would get convulsion because he was so scared from school and from what has happened to him. My mother had to teach him at home, homeschooling. And, but all of his life, he also stayed in pioneering place till he died in Iran, few years ago in that pioneering post. But this is nephew of Amu, a doctor. He became a pharmacist. My brother also was working with him there as pharmacist for some time. He became pharmacist, Manuchehr Ruhi. And he was in city of Bojnor till few years before, just after revolution, few years ago, he was martyred in that city. The second son of Mr. Ruhi. He was martyred in that city, and this is their grave. The one on the right is the grave of Amu. The one on the left down is his nephew, Manuchehr Ruhi. And this was the story of our pioneering in that place. But it was there that I decided to be architect. And all of my life, anybody asked me, I said I want to be architect. Only when I was 16 years old, one of my friends went to School of Architecture in Tehran, and from there wrote to me that, what is architecture? And he told me that architects built houses and buildings and cinemas and theaters and hospitals and airports, and did not mention much about the temples. But my mother had taught that architects will build a temple, and he wanted me to be an architect. Anyhow, now I go to the second part of my story. Second part of my story starts with the chapter 2. Starts with one snowy days in Tehran. Many years later, I was at that time in the final years of the School of Architecture, and I was publishing a magazine for children called Varva magazine. Some of you had seen it at that time. And because of that, National Special Assembly appointed me the board of director of the Publishing Trust of Iran, National Baha'i Publishing Trust. Anyhow, I was very young and all of the members were old. One day, Dr. Mohajer, hand of the cause, was coming to the Publishing Trust board to talk about the Baha'i books and Baha'i publications and all of that. And so I was there, and we listened to Dr. Mohajer and all of that. When we arrived, when I went to, this was in Baha'i Hazirat al-Quds, that the dome was demolished in Tehran. The dome had been demolished, but the rest of the building existed. Anyhow, when I arrived with my car there, snow had started. The snow started, and like a very, very heavy snow started. So we went to the meeting, and we listened to Dr. Mohajer and all of that, and we were supposed to continue the meeting. But after his talk was finished, Dr. Mohajer told me, Fariboz, take me home. I said, of course, yes, I'm at your service. I guided him to come out to my car. I said, oh my God, my car is stuck in snow because the snow has been so heavy that we have almost, I don't know, something near 40 centimeters of snow there. So there was no way. Poor Dr. Mohajer, that was even heart patient at that time even. So he had to push my car, and I drive the car out of the snow. We sat in the car and we went toward his home. The home of his brother that was in Tehran, because Mr. Muhajir was always traveling and he was always out of the country. Now, on the way, he told me, Faribos, do you know that by the way, I knew Mr. Muhajir very well. I loved him. All of the youth, they loved him. He would travel to, when I was in Mashhad, he would come to Mashhad and he was talking to us. And he was so inspiring. When he spoke, really everybody wanted to do something. He wanted to just go for somewhere, go pioneering, do something. And he was such a magnificent magician, wizard. He would talk and he would change your mind to leave everything and go. In fact, he invited me once there that I go to Philippines and stay at his home and study whatever I want, and then later on. And I love to go, I wanted to go, but my mother was very wise. She told me that we have to consult with the assembly. If the assembly said you should go, then you go. I permit you to go. But if not, you should stay and finish your education. So I don't know if my mother had spoken to the assembly or not, but the assembly decided that I have to stay in Tehran, in Iran, and finish my education. And after education, go whatever I want. Anyhow, so I stayed, but that was, Dr. Muhajir knew me, all of that, and he knew that what I'm doing and all of that. I was, by that time, this is, so he told me that, you know, that the House of Justice have called for the design for the Baha'i House of Worship of Samoa and India. He said, I think you should design the Temple of India. I said, I was so young and really, I knew that I had heard about the invitation, and I knew that some of the most distinguished architects and known people that with much more experience than me and big office and this and that, including the Dean of the School of Architecture, Mr. Mohandas Seyhun, and that was our Dean of the school. He was not my professor, but he was the Dean of the school. He had participated. So I thought, really, this is just why, I mean, me and all of that. But Mr. Muhajir was so forceful, always. He knew what he wants. So he said that you have to do it. And then I said, of course, okay, I will do that. I will think about that. And then a few weeks later, he had come from another country to another country. On the way from airport, at the airport, Mehrabad airport, he called me. He said, Faribos, did you write the letter to the House of Justice? I said, no, I will, but I promise you that I will write. He said, I will come back to Tehran a few months from now. And on my way, I want to take your letter and your everything, the file and everything that you want to send to the House of Justice. Yeah. So I said, for sure, I will do that. And this time I did it. I sat and I did that work and I completed. Then 2 years later, I gave my letter to Mr. Dr. Muhajir and I left. 2 years later, I went for, at that time, I had finished my education and I was working as the project manager and the architect of the Pahlavi Cultural Center in Marble Palace. It was for the Queen of Iran office, the private cabinet of Her Imperial Majesty. And it was the decision of the Shah and Queen that they wanted to transfer the palace of his father, Reza Shah, to a big cultural center. Change and a very large construction was supposed to be built underground between the palace and the other museum next to it, that is Negaristan Negaristan Museum. So I was working on that, and I went to Haifa with my wife and my oldest son, Nisan, for pilgrimage. We were there when one day House of Justice invited me for a meeting with 4 members of the House of Justice. So I went there, and 4 members of the House of Justice were there, Mr. Fatah Azam and Mr. Naqshbani. I remember with 2 other members. They were there and they talked to me and they said that they have looked at my file and what I have done and all of that. And I had written my approach to the design. I explained that what I said, it's not correct for me to design the temple without going to India, without making a thorough research of the architecture of India and all of that, which I have never traveled to India. I have to do that, but how I would design the temple if I'm the architect, how I see it in my brain, how I'm going to approach it. And I had written something like it, my own thoughts and dreams. I was asked, House of Justice, they told me that, do you know how difficult it is to build a temple in India, country that there are thousands and thousands of temples, and Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, Jain, Muslims, Christians, all of them. And everything has strong meaning and everything has strong mythology and this and that. So it's not like any other country that you can design, in United States, you can design any building and you can see that Frank Lloyd Wright designed a very extraordinary and totally different building and he called it the Jewish temple. You can build a temple, Le Corbusier designed Ronchamp in Europe, in a completely revolutionary, modern, that nobody had ever seen a temple, a church like that, but he designed it. But in those countries, it's possible because people, they look at they do not have that much preconception of a temple. It could be different from what they thought, but not in India. In India, even today, when they built a temple, they built it in the nature of what they do in the past. So, and I said, I don't know. I said, I cannot tell you for sure that I am fully aware of what the challenges are, but I can guess to the best of my ability. Then I was asked, do you know how difficult it is to build anything in India? Because it's so primitive right now. It is so slow technology. Its country is completely sealed. At that time, there was no permit for any foreign equipment or material or foreign service or everything. So that is another challenge that it is there. And really, if you go to India, you would see that this was at the time of Mrs. Gandhi. Up to 10, 15 years ago, the doors were completely closed and everything was done in India, Indian. And that's why, in fact, I did in my work in temple, everything was Indian material, everything that I used, technology, engineers, equipment, everything Indian. We could not use a drill. We did not use an excavator. We did not use anything. Anyhow, again, I said that, I know this is a very tough challenge, but I have not visited India ever. So then House of Justice asked me that, do you think that you are capable of doing that? I said, looking at my condition right now and my situation right now, I would say no. It's a very big challenge. But if the House of Justice give me this task and tell me go and do it, and if you tell me that go and do it, I'm 100% sure I will go and do it. I will do it because it's something else. I don't think that all of the heroes of our faith, all of the servants of Baha'u'llah, all of the people in our history, they did things that they had never done before. They had never done before. Badi was not even a good Baha'i. He was a really difficult boy. His father was worried about him. And look at what he did. They said that if you ask me, I will do that. Then House of Justice said, but how you see that you can do that. You are busy in such a big project right now related to the Shah of Iran and Queen of Iran and this and that. And how you will do that. I said, without 1 second doubt, I said, immediately, I will resign from everything. I will go to India. I do nothing but to do that building. And this is exactly what I did later. For that 10 years, I did nothing but the temple. And then House of Justice said that, okay, go, we will get in touch with you. Very, quite some months or year after that, because the decision was taken at that time. First, they decided about the Samoa temple and this and that. And then after a long time, I received a letter from the House of Justice that had gone to the National Spiritual Assembly. National Assembly sent it to me, and I was told that, okay, you said if we tell you to go, you will go and you will do it, now go. And I was asked that I have to do it first. I have the chance to submit a design, complete design. And if that design was approved, I am the architect of the temple. If not, somebody else will be given that task. So that is the way that I started working on that project. And I traveled to India immediately. I traveled to India and I was very, really, I had just read the book called A Journey to India. I don't know if you have read it, from Hermann Hesse in Safari be Hind. Hermann Hesse, very famous writer, German writer, had written that book. And it's a very mysterious book. I went to India and I tried to completely empty my brain from anything. I didn't want to think about anything because I have a very bad problem, and that is that anything comes to my mind, it never goes out. I get stuck with it. I have to do it. So I tried to not to think about anything. I said, I have to go there and something, some secret, something will come to my way. Anyhow, many of the friends, many people, they ask me, did you dream about this temple? Did you get inspiration of something? And all? Many people, they believe that architects, they receive some voodoo imagination, something happens to them, one day they wake up or they sleep and in their dream they see something. This is completely nonsense. No idea comes to your mind in sleep. Lots of ideas come to your mind in nightmares and lack of sleep. You don't sleep, you will think, you will get ideas. You have to suffer. In Persian, we have a poem that says, گویند سنگ لعل شود در مقام صبر. گویند سنگ لعل شود در مقام صبر. آری شود ولی به خون جگر شود. They say that the stone can turn to jewel in the world of patience. Yes, it can turn to diamond, but it will turn with lots of blood and sweat. You have to suffer. You have to work on it. Nothing comes right from the sky. So I had to go, and I was looking for that, and I was traveling from one corner to another corner, and all of that. But it's very interesting. Now, in one of the, first of all, in India, it was always in my brain that why, among all of the Islamic buildings, Taj Mahal, that you see the photograph on the screen, is so loved by the people in India and all over the world. While in Iran, we have Islamic architectures that is much more beautiful and much more elaborate and much more advanced. I mean, as far as domes are concerned, the Taj Mahal practically is a solid, it doesn't have inside, very little inside. We have buildings that are beautiful and everything outside is just the skin, and inside you have space and lots of architecture inside. Here, it's no inside. It just, you go to a building, in basement, there are some graves, and that's it. And minarets are completely, they're non-functional. They are at the corners. In all of the Iran Islamic architecture, minarets, they have a structural, they are like a nail that nail the building to the floor, and they have a structural values and all of that. But why none of them are as beloved as the temple of, so one day, early morning, I went to Taj Mahal, and it was empty. It was raining. Nobody would come. It was almost empty. So I was going around and thinking about it. One a tourist guide, one of these Hindi walas, tourist guides, they come and they were begging me that, give me some 10 rupees or something, and I tell you the whole story of Taj Mahal. And I said, no, I don't want it. I know everything. Thank you so much. Go. And he would not give up. Eventually, I said, okay, come, get this 10 rupees and tell me whatever you want quickly and go. So I thought he will tell me something and he will go. He started talking about Taj Mahal. And then he was starting like a machine. He was telling everything with this very difficult accent in English, telling me. And then when he was talking about the Taj Mahal, Mumtaz Mahal, and Taj Mahal, and love of Mumtaz Mahal and Akbar and Shah Jahan, the minute it came to the sickness of the queen, I noticed that his voice is breaking in his throat. He's so sad, as if this happened yesterday. So I thought to myself, this man has told this story 1 million times for 1 rupee, 2 rupees. 1 million times. Still, after so many times, he has such feeling about this. So this building has some mystery, something that talks to the heart of the people. And if I want to build a temple that people like it, and they come to it like these people that they come to Taj Mahal, the people that they come to Taj Mahal, they are not all of them tourists. Many of them are coming from the city, from the village, from Iran, and they have seen the temple, this building, for 20 times, 100 times, I don't know, but they come. And every time they come, they feel it, they have it. There is need for a story, a mystery, a love, something that people will never forget it. The minute they come to this temple, they think about that. And that came to my mind, that this is the first thing that I have to discover. I have to find the mystery that I use it. And then, strange enough, just at the beginning of my trip to India, I was going from out of Delhi, and I was traveling. In one of these places, a very simple villager, almost. He was a teacher, art teacher in schools of, I don't know. He had come to my host and said that I want to see the architect. So they told me that, forget about it. If you don't have time, he's just someone, no one. I said, no, of course I want to talk to him. Let me see what is it. Because I really wanted to hear what, and I did not have intention to talk to architects, because I don't think that they get that. By the way, the first thing that I learned in India is that the temples of India are not designed by architects. All of the temples that you see are designed by the priests, because they consider this as a spiritual journey. They say that you have to, this is something that the priest will discover in his search for, in his search and his meditation. It comes to his mind. And that's very interesting. They believe the first thing that comes to the mind of a person is a bubble when you go to the world of really contemplation. The first thing that comes to your mind is a bubble, and that's why they think that any building with the dome is that's why the Indian Hindu temples are so complicated, because more complicated it is, it shows that you have had, your journey has been more fruitful and more mysterious. But any building with the dome, they think that this is bubble. This is the first stage of spirituality. That's why the Hindus, they don't like buildings with the dome, and any building with the dome, as far as they're concerned, is a mosque. So this was one thing, and that's why for them, Taj Mahal looks like a mosque. I mean, it is like a, anyhow. So it's this fellow came and so that was the first thing that. So I said, let me meet this man. So he came and he told me in a very simple way. He told me that, you know, have you heard about the lotus in India? Lotus is this and that, and of course, lotus is behind every bus in India. Lotus is on the wall of every truck. There is a lotus. And lotus is the sign of the opposition party to Congress party. Right now, the governing party of India, Bharata Janata Party, their symbol is lotus. Symbol is the lotus is the really spiritual flower of India. So, but he said, so he talked to me about this. I was very impressed by his devotion that he has come to talk to me because he has heard that I'm architect and I have come to design the temple and this and that. So, but I was not thinking, I mean, I didn't take his idea of the lotus seriously because I thought only Arabs, they like to design, to build something that looks like something else. Like they say, build a house for me like an airplane, or they want a house like something. I said, who wants to see a building in the shape of a flower? Anyhow, I traveled again and again, but this concept that he had put in my mind, I said that I have a problem, that if you put anything in my mind, it doesn't go out. So everywhere I went, I saw the lotus. I went to caves of Ajanta and Ellora. They put light with mirrors from far distance. Sun, they took it to the sun, and then they shoot in the depth of the cave, and somebody else take a mirror in the cave and shoot it in the ceiling, and you see lotus on the ceiling, on the doors, on everywhere. Lotus, lotus. So everywhere I went, I saw lotus. Then I went to the south of India, and there was one day I was in a meeting, a Baha'i doctor that I was just graduated. By the way, many of Indians are highly educated, and you can see many vegetable place that they're selling vegetables, and the fellow had put his license of engineering or medicine on the wall. So he told me that he said, what are you doing here? I said, I've come to search for this and that. He was a Baha'i, Dr. Sudhakar. And he told me that, well, I at that time he was young, very young. Now he's old and he has a family and like that. He told me that I also come with you. I said, but you are a doctor. He said, oh, I'm free. I come, I guide you everywhere. And then he was a very interesting man. He had spent, before he became Baha'i, he has spent time in Hindu temples, in Buddhist temples and this and that. So on the way I asked him that, somebody told me about lotus. What do you think? He became so excited and he said, have you seen lotus in life? I said, not really. I have seen it in nurseries and places like that in England. There is a famous, in London, there is a famous park and they have lotus. But not in nature. I have not seen it in nature. So he said, no, he killed himself that day and didn't let me see anything else till he showed me he found the lotus. It was not the season for lotus. Eventually we found the bud of a lotus somewhere, and this is a real display of water lily in the pond, and you can find lakes in India with millions of the lotus at the season, but not at that time. Anyhow, I was so impressed by him that this excitement that he showed me. So I came back to Iran. I bought some books. I came back to Iran. In Iran, I had a professor that I very much admired. He's one of the most bright. He is now architects of Iran. Dr. Nader Ardalan. He was professor. He graduated from Harvard University. He was a professor in our school, and he was my professor for my final thesis. I was the only one, together with my brother-in-law, Mr. Rafi'i, and that Fuad Rafi'i, that he accepted us as to be our guide, and we submitted our design to him. And so, and after that, he was very kind to me. I joined his team for some time, and I very much respected him. And I knew that his opinion, he has written a book called Sense of Unity about Islamic architecture. He's a magnificent man, and he has done some very beautiful architecture out of Iran and in Iran. Of course, later on he left Iran and again came back to Harvard, and he has not worked too much on architecture anymore. He retired. But I had respect for him. I thought I'd go and meet him and talk to him. And if he accepts, because this idea of a building in the shape of a flower, it's so bothering mind. So I called him. He said, of course, come. I went for breakfast to his house. We talked together, and I told him this is the idea. He was not a Baha'i, but he had lots of respect, and he knew me. I had worked with him. So he listened to everything, and the concept of I mentioned to him about the function of the Baha'i temples and this and that, unity of mankind and all of that. He told me, he said, I think this idea is so strong. It is impossible for you to escape from it. He said it's like a Labetir. I don't know if you have read the book Labetir, The Edge of the Blade, I think from Somerset Maugham. He said, it is like Labetir. To walk on a laser edge of the laser of a blade, it is impossible. If you walk, it's a miracle. If it cuts, it will be very bad. He said, I think this idea is like that. Either you will, but you cannot escape. So accept it and work on that. If you can solve it, it will become a masterpiece. If not, it will ruin the concept. And so I said, okay, if he says that, if here a man that is not a Baha'i and is a wonderful architect, he is willing, because Baha'is, they have love for Baha'u'llah. Anything you build, they say is beautiful. But for him, he said, so I started the work. I worked very fast, and in 3 months, I submitted my design. I called the House of Justice. I went to Haifa with my model. When I arrived there, Mr. Fateh Azam came to my hotel. It was Saturday. The seat of the House of Justice was closed. But Mr. Fateh Azam said that he will come to pick the model, take it to the seat of the House of Justice. And at that time, seat of the House of Justice was in Pilgrim House right now, in the Western Pilgrim House. That is now just the Baha'i offices, and it's not even Western Pilgrim House. So right opposite the master's house. So he said, I will take it there. Then he came, Mr. Faizi was with him, hand of the cause. I loved Mr. Faizi. He was my really guru. And Mr. Faizi was so kind to me, and he has written so many letters to me. He loved Varga magazine, and because of that, he was very, anyhow, that day, Mr. Faizi told me that when they took the model, we took the model, it was in a box, we took it to the seat of the House of Justice. He opened it. The minute Mr. Fateh Azam saw it, he said, for months and months, I wanted to call you and tell you that I think Lotus is such a wonderful idea for the temple. But he said, I never did that because I thought I may influence your thought, and it may be harmful for you. Maybe you have another idea. So I'm so delighted to see this. And he said he thinks he's so inspired. Mr. Faizi told me that, he said, I think this is the reward of Baha'u'llah to you for Varga magazine. Because beloved guardian and Baha'u'llah, they love children, and anybody that served the children, they will bless him. So it was his blessing. And then we went next day, members of the House of Justice came, they looked at the model, they saw everything. They did not ask any question from me. Mr. Charles Wolcott was the chairman of the day. He said, it is inspired, that's all. And he said, wait till Amatul Bahar Ruhi Khanum come and sees that. I had never met Amatul Bahar Ruhi Khanum up to that time. Next day, Amatul Bahar Ruhi Khanum came to the same seat of the House of Justice at that time, Pilgrim House. She was very nervous. She looked at Khanum, was such a sharp lady. I've never seen in my life more clever person, more sharp in mind and more frank person than Khanum. I really loved and I admired her, and I was blessed for almost 15 years to closely be at her service, and I learned a lot from her. But at that day, she looked at the thing, she looked at everything. Then she told me only, she said, follow me. Yes. So I was very young, and I was really to be at, to be at presence of the House of Justice or presence of Amatul Bahar Ruhi Khanum for Persian friends is really something very, very special. I mean, people would give their life to be that, to do that, and that's sometimes also we make them to be scared from us because we are so nervous. And anyhow, Khanum told me, come with me. I went with her she went directly to Master's house, and I waited downstairs. She went upstairs to the section of Beloved Guardian and Khanum, and came back with a beautiful gift for me. She gave it to me, and she said, I was so relieved to see this design. She said, I did not want to be alive and vote yet once for a building that I don't like. She said, Beloved Guardian always accepted what was the best available to him at that time. And his resources were not that much. Often he would accept something, even if he was not really, that was not his best wish. And anyhow, but he said this time, I think this is inspired. And the temple was approved. And in this way, I always thought that the Temple of India was the gift of Baha'u'llah to my mother for all of the difficult life, all of the suffering that she had throughout her life, for being a real devoted servant of Baha'u'llah. And this, unfortunately, neither Dr. Mahajer nor my mother could see the temple. Dr. Mahajer was following regularly with me. She was calling me at the temple. She was always in the field of teaching. He called me just 1 week before he passed away. And he told me what is the situation and what is happening with the construction and this and that and all of that. And he was so excited about that. But then we heard the past news of his passing. And my mother also passed away right at the beginning when the construction had started. So in Iran, and she couldn't see that. But the day that temple was completed, on that night, I woke up at midnight with a very, very extraordinary dream. I was so shocked and shaken. In my dream, I saw temple was 10 times bigger than reality. It was something very, very dramatically huge. And I was taking my hand, the hand of my mother, and I was showing her the temple. So I think she had seen the temple with her own eyes. Thank you. That's the story of today. Next story will be about, again, 1953. But it's a magnificent story related to the plans of beloved guardian and how the temple land was bought. I hope I will see you there.